Before we get into the video, could everyone please subscribe to my Endless Diary Tales channel? Thank you so much. I jolted awake from a deep sleep. Still dazed, I glanced around. White bedsheets, a matching duvet cover, the familiar decor of the room. Wasn't this the hotel I stayed at during my last life when I was taking the grad school entrance exam? In my previous life, to avoid any delays on the exam day, my boyfriend Jason Chen and I had booked rooms at a hotel near the testing center well in advance. We stayed in adjacent rooms. However, despite being someone who usually woke up early, I overslept on the day of the exam. By the time I woke up, there was no way I could make it in time. Jason later told me he knocked on my door and called out, but when I didn't respond, he assumed I had already left. It wasn't until he got to the exam center and didn't see me that he realized something was wrong. He tried calling me multiple times, but none of the calls went through, and there wasn't enough time to come back for me. I thought I had only myself to blame for sleeping in and missing the test. I cried my heart out, devastated. Jason held me gently and said, "It's fate. If you didn't take the exam, it's okay. You'll still find a good job with your bachelor's degree." A few months later, Jason was accepted into a prestigious 985 university for his graduate studies. As for me, I got a job at a major tech company through campus recruitment and began the grueling 996 work life. Jason constantly complained to me about the stress of studying, the pressure of social obligations, and how his small stipend wasn't enough to live on. Wanting him to focus on his studies, I used nearly all of my hard-earned salary and bonuses to support him. But he used my money to treat younger female classmates to meals and fun while he was in school. After graduating, he dumped me without hesitation and ran off with one of those girls. I confronted him, asking what I had ever done wrong to deserve this. He looked at me with disdain, eyes full of sarcasm, and said, "Lena, I've been improving all these years while you've been standing still, lacking ambition. What makes you think you deserve me?" I couldn't say a word. On the way home, I was in such a daze that I was hit and killed by a speeding car. It wasn't until I was lying in a hospital bed dying that I found out the truth. Jason had drugged my brown sugar drink with sleeping pills that morning. His intention was for me to miss the exam, so I could become a free ATM funding his education. I was filled with endless regret, but it was too late. I died with bitter hatred in my heart. But the heavens must have taken pity on me somehow. I was reborn. Still piecing everything together, I picked up my phone. As expected, there were 2 missed calls from Jason Chen, clearly staged to look like he had tried to wake me up. Maybe it was my overwhelming resentment that altered fate. But this time, I woke up a full 30 minutes earlier than I had in my past life. It was now 8:18 a.m. Given the distance between the hotel and the exam center, I wouldn't make it by walking. But if I ran, I might still make it before the 8:45 cutoff. With that thought, I threw off the blanket and rushed out the door. Every second counted. I sprinted down the road like my life depended on it, and finally made it into the exam center at 8:44. Thank God I still qualified to take the test. Jason was assigned to the same testing room as me. When he saw me rush in, his face twisted with a strange mix of shock, awkwardness, and unease. Jason wanted to get into grad school, but he didn't want to deal with any tough competition. He clung to me like a parasite, even choosing the same school and major I had. My scores had always been better than his, so my chances of getting in were far higher. By stopping me from taking the exam, he'd remove a strong competitor and keep me around to support him financially, killing 2 birds with 1 stone. What a manipulative, penniless scumbag. I gave him a long, cold stare, then sat down at my desk. I had spent 2 full years preparing for this exam. The test questions weren't difficult for me. Even with the few minutes I lost at the start, I still managed to complete everything smoothly. After submitting my exam, I was packing up when Jason suddenly stormed over and questioned me coldly. "Lena, where did you go this morning? I called you several times and you didn't pick up. You almost missed the exam." I hadn't even confronted him yet. And here he was playing the victim first. Remembering the betrayal of my past life, I wanted to rip that fake, hypocritical face of his to shreds. But I had more exams to take. I couldn't afford to lose control now. So I simply clenched my fists tightly, staring at Jason with cold, burning hatred. I live right next door to you. You left quietly on your own without calling for me. Were you hoping I'd miss the exam? I said coldly. I had always treated Jason Chun with warmth and care throughout the years we were together. I had never spoken to him so harshly before. Jason froze for a second. Lena, what are you talking about? He said, feigning confusion. You're the one who overslept. How can you blame me? Oh, I raised an eyebrow. Didn't you just say you didn't know where I went this morning? So, how would you know I overslept? I quickly caught the inconsistency in his words. With a half-smile, I added, could it be you deliberately made me oversleep? Like a guilty thief caught red-handed. A flash of panic flickered in Jason's eyes. But he wasn't stupid. He immediately masked it with irritation. Lena, what the hell are you trying to say? Exactly what it sounds like, I said flatly. I didn't bother with him any further. I turned around and walked out of the exam room on my own. On the way back to the hotel, I considered going to the police. I even typed 911 into my phone, but when I got to the final digit, I hesitated and stopped myself. Last night's brown sugar drink had been brought to me by Jason in a disposable paper cup. After I drank it, he casually took the cup away. At the time, I thought nothing of it, just assumed he had the habit of cleaning up after himself. But looking back now, it was clear he was being meticulous, destroying the only piece of evidence before I could even sense anything was wrong. Reporting this now probably wouldn't lead to anything. There'd be no evidence, and worse, I'd alert him that I was on to him. Better to wait. I'd stay calm, finish the exams, and handle everything afterward. Lost in thought, I found myself back at the hotel without even realizing it. Just as I stepped into the elevator, Jason came rushing after me, clearly in a panic. He must have been hiding all this time, worried I had caught on to something. Now, seeing that I hadn't called the cops or done anything out of the ordinary, he finally relaxed and showed himself. Lena, don't be mad, he said, putting on a remorseful face. I shouldn't have snapped at you earlier. I called and knocked this morning, but you didn't answer. I really thought hearing him repeat the exact same excuse he'd used in my previous life. I couldn't help but sneer inwardly. On the surface, though, I put on a calm face and said, it's nothing. It wasn't your fault. I was just in a bad mood and said something I shouldn't have. Jason's eyes clearly brightened with relief. With his cruel and manipulative nature, if one tactic didn't work, he would definitely try again. I needed to stay composed, lull him into a false sense of security, and wait for the right moment to gather solid evidence enough to get him thrown in jail and sewing prison uniforms. He reached into his bag and pulled out a cup of milk tea with a big smile. It's my fault. All my fault. I got this for you to say sorry. Drink it while it's hot. I glanced at the milk tea in his hand and furrowed my brows slightly, so eager to make a move again. But as soon as that thought crossed my mind, I dismissed it. Jason had been on edge the entire time, watching my every move, afraid I'd report him. If he tried anything now, and I did go to the police, he'd be walking right into a trap. There was no way he'd risk tampering with the drink again so soon. He'd probably try to act normal, maintain the illusion of innocence. So I took the milk tea without hesitation, took a sip and said casually, thanks. Seeing me drink it without suspicion, Jason's tense expression visibly relaxed. He smiled and said eagerly, you must be hungry. Let's go get something to eat. No thanks. I'd rather rest a bit more. I replied with a shake of my head, then turned and headed back to my room. Once inside, I tossed the milk tea straight into the trash and immediately dug out my English review notes from my suitcase. I went through them as fast as I could, scanning the material in my mind. In my last life, my English scores were decent. But after working nonstop for 3 years, I had forgotten a lot of the key points. Even though I had reviewed them afterward, I could only remember the general idea of the questions. I needed to go over everything again to make sure I was fully prepared. Fortunately, the afternoon exam went smoothly. To prevent any further surprises, I told Jason Chin that the roadside budget hotel was too noisy and used that excuse to ditch him and move into a slightly farther, but much quieter 5-star hotel. As soon as the exam ended, I bought a high-speed train ticket back to school, grabbed my suitcase, and headed straight for the train station. I had barely arrived when Jason called. I stared coldly at the screen. He kept calling one time after another. When he reached the 8th attempt, I finally picked up slowly and deliberately. Before I could say a word, his angry voice came blasting through the speaker. "How many times have I told you not to run off like that? Where the hell did you go?" "I'm at the train station," I said coolly. "Heading back to school." "The train station? Why didn't you wait for me?" "You're so selfish," Jason snapped, climbing straight up to his usual moral high ground. Then in his commanding tone he added, "Whatever. I won't argue with you anymore. Just buy my ticket too. I'm heading there now." Jason came from a poor family. His entire college education was funded through financial aid and student loans. I had paid for his hotel stay and his train ticket for the grad school exam. Even the registration fee had come out of my pocket. I had no idea what was wrong with me in my last life to actually believe a guy like him, who lived off women, could ever have a conscience. Just thinking about it made my stomach turn. My grip on the phone tightened involuntarily as I replied coldly, "My train's about to leave. I'm not waiting for you. And as for your ticket, what didn't your kindergarten teacher ever tell you about handling your own business?" The other end of the line went dead silent. Without a second thought, I hung up on him. Right now, the last thing I wanted was to see him. Even just picturing his face in my mind made me want to stab something. As for why I didn't just break up with him, of course, I wanted to give him another chance. A chance to incriminate himself. Let the filth come to light and stick to him for good. While I was lost in thought, Jason tried calling again, this time with a voice call. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him anymore. I turned my phone off. With the stress of the exams behind me, I finally felt relaxed. I slept soundly all the way to my destination. When I dragged my suitcase back into my familiar dorm room, it felt like a lifetime had passed. My roommate, Kiki Wong, had applied to a school closer by, so she was already back. As I walked in, she paused her scrolling through short videos and said mockingly, Well, the queen of true love actually came back this early." Kiki had always been blunt. Back when I first started dating Jason, she had warned me several times that he was manipulative and not to be trusted. She told me to think more for myself and stop spending so much money on him. When she found out I'd missed the exam because I overslept, she even asked suspiciously whether I had eaten or drunk anything Jason had given me the night before. But I had been too blind, too deep in denial. Not only did I ignore her concern, I accused her of insulting Jason. We had a huge fight. And after that, she completely gave up on me and stopped talking to me altogether. Now, seeing her again, I suddenly felt a sting in my nose. Tears welled up. I almost cried right then and there, seeing my eyes turn red in an instant. Kiki sat up nervously from her bed. "Whoa. All I did was tease you a little. What are you trying to guilt-trip me?" "Of course not," I said, biting my lip. I didn't want to cry, but as memories of my past life came flooding back, the tears just wouldn't stop. Then reported it to the hiring agency. Although an investigation later confirmed the candidate had been framed, the presence of the banned substance in their system was undeniable. According to regulations, they were permanently disqualified from ever applying for public service again. All I wanted was to catch Jason committing a real crime. I had no intention of becoming collateral damage in the process. After that, Kiki and I chatted for a while about potential interview questions we might encounter, then went to bed. The next morning, I was woken up by a phone call. Damn it, I had forgotten that Jason had 2 phone numbers. I had only blocked one. I quickly hung up and added this one to the block list, too. Just as I blocked him, a text popped up from his number. "Lena, how can you be so heartless? Do you have any idea what you've done? I spent the whole night sitting on a hard train seat, and now I'm about to fall apart." Before I could even react, another message came in. "I followed you all the way to this far-off school just so we could be together. And you just left me behind riding a nice high-speed train all by yourself. If you had even a shred of conscience, it would eat you alive every day." His shamelessness made me laugh out loud. He hadn't followed me anywhere. He had been too lazy to do the research, too broke to afford tutoring, too careless to take notes, and had just latched on to me from the start. He was worried I'd do better than him, so he sabotaged my exam. And now he had the gall to say he was accompanying me. If I hadn't lived through this myself, I wouldn't believe someone this shameless even existed. I shot back a reply without hesitation. Jason, have you no shame? Over the past 2 years, how much money have I spent on you? Do I need to tally it all up for you? Poverty and pride don't mix, and Jason's financial insecurity had always been his biggest weakness. As expected, he didn't reply. I thought hitting his sore spot would buy me a few days of peace, but I had underestimated just how far Jason would go. He ambushed me outside the dorm building. Right there in front of everyone, he suddenly dropped to his knees and burst into tears. Lena, I know you're still mad at me. I shouldn't have failed to set extra alarms for you. I shouldn't have gone to the exam without checking again when you didn't answer the door. I was wrong. I swear I'll never do it again. If I have to give up my future to stay by your side, I will. Manipulative men like Jason were masters of flipping the script. One moment of drama, one pitiful act, and suddenly sympathy was flowing from every direction. People around us started whispering and pointing. What kind of person is that? Overslept and nearly missed the exam, and now she's blaming someone else. Seriously, a man should have dignity. Forcing your boyfriend to kneel in public, that's just aggressive and gross. She thinks she's all that just because she's got a little money. As Jason Chen realized he had successfully turned public opinion, a flash of smugness flickered in his eyes. He quickly shifted into an even more pitiful and helpless expression. Don't be so hard on Lena, he said, choking up. She's always been kind and gentle. It's not what you all think. Watching his pathetic performance, I couldn't stop sneering on the inside. The only reason he dared act so shamelessly was because he was sure I was too dumb to suspect that the brown sugar drink had been drugged. He assumed I was just mad because he hadn't knocked harder to wake me up. He counted on me not realizing the truth. No matter what my written test score ended up being, he believed there was still a chance to sabotage me before the interviews. I'd failed to get into grad school, and he'd keep me around as his personal ATM. Too bad his grand plan was doomed from the start. Once I saw his act had built up enough tension, I squeezed out a few tears and began to cry, my voice trembling. Jason, do you even have a conscience when you speak? For the past 2 years, I've cooked for you, done your laundry, organized your notes, signed you up for prep courses. I even paid your exam fees and your hotel. Just because I didn't have money to buy you a high-speed rail ticket home. You hate me for it. You humiliate me in public like this. I raised my voice, practically shouting, as a fresh wave of onlookers crowded around. Then I dropped to my knees with a loud thud. I come from an average family too. I barely get by each month on a tiny allowance. I really don't have money for you anymore. Please just let me go. As I finished, I bowed deeply twice, slamming my forehead to the ground, kneeling and playing the victim. Please, I could act better than him any day. A couple of light taps on the floor weren't going to hurt me, but they gave me the moral high ground in the crowd and knocked a few years off Jason's life in the process. Win-win. For over 2 years, I'd always been the sweet, docile girlfriend, the kind who never raised her voice. Jason had never seen me like this. Furious, out of control, completely unhinged. He was so shocked he jumped to his feet and backed far away. Right at that moment, Kiki Wong returned to the dorm building. She had long lost all patience with Jason's shamelessness, and with her bold and outspoken personality, she didn't hesitate for a second. She rushed over, pulled me up from the ground, then planted her fists on her hips and yelled at him. Kiki had a sharp memory. She recalled every awful thing Jason had done to me over the past few years, and she laid it all out loud and clear. With each point she brought up, the crowd grew more and more disgusted. No girl likes a scumbag. The same people who had just accused me of being dramatic now turned on Jason, calling him a jerk and a disgrace. Jason never expected things to spiral out of control like this. In the end, he fled the scene, tail between his legs. That entire scene was captured on video by multiple students. It quickly made its rounds through various alumni group chats, becoming the hot gossip of the week. But I had no intention of letting Jason off so easily. Once I got back to the dorm, I made a mind map detailing every cent I'd spent on him over the 2+ years we dated. Every meal, every ride, every class, every errand I'd run. I even listed every sacrifice I had made for his sake. Then I posted the whole thing anonymously on the campus confession board. Jason was completely and publicly destroyed. The chaos lasted 3 days. Everyone thought the whole thing was finally over. But this was just the appetizer. My real goal was to enrage Jason before the results of the written exam were released. People act recklessly when they're angry. And in his case, he had already nearly succeeded in ruining me once. He wouldn't hesitate to try again. I needed him to snap, to take one last risk. And for that, I needed to disappear from his world entirely. So Kiki and I packed our things and flew to Sonia for vacation. I paid for everything. Consider it repayment for how cold I had been to her in my past life. Back then, I had joined a major tech company right after graduation. I worked endless overtime just to earn enough for Jason to study in peace. I pushed myself so hard I developed chronic health issues in my early 20s. So now I cherish this hard-earned break. I spent the entire vacation in total relaxation, lying around and doing absolutely nothing, as if trying to reclaim every moment of rest I'd been robbed of before. During that time, even though Jason had been utterly disgraced on campus, he still didn't give up trying to contact me. When I wouldn't pick up his calls, he spammed me with message after message, apologizing and begging for forgiveness. Again and again, Jason started dropping subtle and not so subtle remarks about how getting a master's degree wasn't that useful anyway. In his words, everyone has a graduate degree these days, and it still doesn't guarantee a job. Might as well start working after undergrad and build up 3 years of experience instead. I hadn't planned to respond, but after seeing enough of those messages, I couldn't help myself. I snapped back, blunt and direct. If everyone's doing it, that still doesn't mean you can actually get in. And considering your financial situation, wouldn't it make more sense to go out and earn money for your family instead? Some people are just born shameless. After I hit him with a few truth bombs, Jason's messaging slowed down considerably. Time passed quickly when you were relaxed and living comfortably. Before I knew it, the exam results were released. Despite rushing to take the test, I had a strong foundation from my previous life, and I still remembered parts of the actual questions. I ended up scoring an impressive 380. With that score, as long as I showed up for the interview and didn't lose my mind and physically attack the panel, I was basically guaranteed a spot. As for Jason, he'd been slacking throughout his prep. 3 days of studying followed by 2 days of doing nothing. His foundation had always been weak. In our previous life, he only barely made the interview cut, scoring just 20 points above the threshold. And that was only because he used dirty tricks to eliminate me as competition and managed a fluke performance. This time, he didn't get so lucky. His score was even lower than before, just barely scraping past the cutoff. Unless all the top candidates completely tanked during the interview, he had no chance of making it. He was nothing more than a placeholder now. Jason never expected this kind of outcome. He completely lost it, using a dozen different phone numbers to call me over and over again. When I didn't pick up, he flooded me with texts, pleading, threatening, begging, and manipulating, all with one goal: to get me to voluntarily give up my interview slot. I watched his pathetic desperation with icy detachment. I wasn't just disgusted by him. I was disgusted with myself, too, forever falling for someone like him. He had nothing going for him besides a decent face. My feelings for him in the past had been a disease. Romantic delusion at its worst. But tantrums aside, Jason wasn't ready to let go of the opportunity that he believed rightfully belonged to him. The moment he learned I had returned to campus, the calls ramped up again. This time, he was sobbing and begging me to meet with him just once. I agreed. The truth was, I could have gone straight from home to the grad school for the interview, but I deliberately made a detour through campus. I needed to draw him out. If I never showed up, how would this desperate performance of his ever reach its climax? I put on my best makeup, dressed nicely, and told him to meet me at the garden near the campus lake. During college, I had always been focused on studying. I rarely made time to dress up or take care of my appearance. When Jason saw me now completely transformed, a look of shock and disbelief flashed across his face. He wasn't prepared for how different I looked. The surprise clearly knocked the wind out of him. He walked toward me with a fake smile, and tried to grab my hand. "Lena, you're even more beautiful than before." I stepped back quickly, avoiding his touch with visible disgust. That's what happens when you cut toxic people out of your life. You sleep better, look better. Raising an eyebrow, I added coldly, "Whatever you want to say it now. I need to go back and prep for my interview, especially my English speaking." Yes, I brought up the interview on purpose. I wanted to get under his skin. Sure enough, the moment he heard the word interview, his expression tightened. He didn't even bother to sugarcoat it anymore and jumped straight into his fake, wise, and caring tone. "Lena, it's always been said that the man should work outside the home while the woman takes care of the family. Once we're married, I'll be out there making money for us. There's no need for you to push yourself so hard going to grad school." "Jason, you must have a really poor memory," I said calmly. "The last time you made a scene outside my dorm, I told you I'm done. We broke up. Even if we hadn't." I paused deliberately, letting him think I was wavering. Just as he started to believe I might still be holding on, I dropped the final blow. "Even if we hadn't broken up, what makes you think someone as broke as you could ever afford to marry me?" The truth always stings. Jason Chen's face turned as black as the bottom of a burnt pot the moment I hit his sore spot. His eyes were filled with barely concealed rage. I looked at him with growing contempt, and couldn't even be bothered to say another word. I turned and walked back toward the dorm without looking back, leaving him standing there alone, disheveled in the cold wind. Still, anger alone wasn't enough to stop him. Jason quickly shifted tactics and tried new ways to persuade me to give up my interview slot. He even had his parents call me, begging me to give Jason a chance at his future. To make up for it, they said they'd break tradition and offer a $5,000 dowry when we got married. $50,000. What a life-threatening sum for their whole family. I rejected the offer without hesitation. In fact, I sent them a full breakdown of every expense Jason had racked up on my dime over the past few years and told them to pay it back. Otherwise, I'd sue. I didn't need to imagine the storm my message must have stirred up in the Chen household. The timing was right. The more furious and panicked Jason became, the more likely he'd slip up. I was waiting for that desperate moment when he'd finally lash out. Sure enough, the night before the interview, Jason called again. This time, he put on a humble and gentle act, asking to meet one last time. Was he finally ready to make a move? I was honestly looking forward to it. I curved my lips into a faint smile and agreed to the meeting. Jason was just as stingy as ever. Even with everything on the line, he couldn't bring himself to splurge on a decent meal. He picked a cheap mala hot pot place right outside the school gate. When he saw I'd shown up as promised, he visibly relaxed and eagerly pulled out my chair. Then, as if he'd practiced it, he handed me the bottle of pulpy orange juice that had been sitting in front of him. "Lena, you must be thirsty. Have some juice first," he said with a big eager smile. Of course, I was already on guard. There was no way I'd drink anything Jason gave me at this point. But to keep him from getting suspicious, I accepted the bottle naturally, as if out of habit. Then I casually glanced over the dishes on the table, completely uninterested. "I don't like this stuff anymore," I said flatly. "There's a braised duck neck shop next door. Go buy me some spicy duck neck, will you?" Naturally, Jason jumped to fulfill the request. He left immediately. The second he was gone, I pulled out a bottle of orange juice from my bag, the exact same brand and packaging, and quickly swapped it with the one on the table. If Jason had tampered with anything, the drink would have been the easiest target. He knew orange juice was my favorite, so if he were going to drug me, he'd pick the drink I was most likely to finish. I anticipated his plan, so I came prepared. And even if he had brought a different drink, I would have insisted he get orange juice anyway, just so I could switch it when he wasn't looking. Let him outsmart himself for once. Jason returned quickly with the duck neck. When he saw that I had already drunk half the orange juice in my cup, his eyes flashed with a hint of barely concealed triumph. He kept urging me to eat more of the hot pot. When he picked up his chopsticks and started eating, I was sure there wasn't anything in the food. To put him even more at ease, I ate along with him. Showtime was coming. Sure enough, the next morning, just as I arrived at the interview venue, a pair of police officers came to find me. They showed me their badges and said sternly, "Miss Lena Lee, Your boyfriend Jason Chen has reported that you've been using illegal substances. We need you to come with us. What? That's impossible. I haven't. Before I could finish, I turned to see Jason standing nearby, his face contorted in fake disbelief. Wow. I had thought maybe he'd be smarter than this. At least send an anonymous tip. But no, he had gone ahead and filed a report under his real name. Stupid beyond belief. I couldn't have asked for a better setup. It would make it even easier for the police to get to the truth and clear my name. Jason thought he'd succeeded in his little scheme. He immediately switched to his victim act, trying to sound heartbroken and righteous. Lena, please don't hate me for this. We all have a duty to fight drugs. I just didn't want to watch you spiral down a dark path. Great, I said with a smile. Let's see who ends up going down for this. I calmly followed the officers to the station for further investigation. After a full round of hair and urine tests, the results confirmed that there wasn't a single trace of illegal substances in my system. Officer. I sobbed, tears streaking down my face. I told you I was being framed. I'm about to have my grad school interview. It has to be Jason Chen trying to ruin me. He's been pestering me nonstop, trying to force me to withdraw and give him my spot. I cried my heart out at the police station, gritting my teeth as I begged the officers to get justice for me. I had saved every message Jason had sent me, and I had recordings of both times we met. The evidence was solid. Given the context, it was clear that Jason was the most likely person to target me. Naturally, the police placed him as the prime suspect. While giving my statement, I casually mentioned how Jason had bought me dinner and given me a bottle of pulpy orange juice. Through my tears, I explained how he was nothing more than a manipulative scumbag. Back during the written exam, I drank the brown sugar water he gave me and nearly overslept, almost missing the test. That's why I was careful this time. I didn't drink the orange juice he gave me. What if? The officers immediately picked up on the implication. Where's the bottle now? They asked. It's in my hotel room, I replied. I had considered bringing it with me, but decided against it. Making the evidence seem too conveniently placed might raise suspicion. Leaving it in the room looked more natural. The police didn't waste a second. They headed straight to my hotel and recovered the bottle of orange juice. Lab tests confirmed it. The drink had been laced with a banned substance. If I had consumed it, I wouldn't just have lost my chance at grad school. My name would have been blacklisted from any national-level exam for life. The officers also pulled the security footage from the hot pot restaurant. It clearly showed me switching the drink while Jason was out. Forensic analysis found Jason's fingerprints all over the tampered bottle. Of course, Jason denied everything. He insisted he had nothing to do with it. But by that point, the case had already reached the threshold of a criminal investigation. Denial wasn't going to save him. The police searched his phone and computer. Though he had tried to delete the critical evidence, digital forensics easily recovered it. The drug had been purchased on the black market, traced directly back to Jason. Following the leads, authorities uncovered and shut down an entire illegal drug ring. With the evidence stacked high, Jason couldn't deny it anymore. He broke down again, sobbing and pleading for mercy. I wasn't thinking clearly. Please, Lena, forgive me. I scoffed at his crocodile tears. He could cry all he wanted. He was full of it. Forgive him? In this life or the last, who had ever forgiven me? Trash like him belonged behind bars, sewing prison uniforms until the day he died. Jason Chen was officially arrested. Given the malicious nature of his actions, I reached out to a few media outlets, making sure the story spread far and wide. Public outrage exploded. The entire community was furious. Jason was facing serious criminal charges. His bright future was now a prison sentence, and he was bound to spend his youth behind bars. His loudmouth mother called me repeatedly, sometimes begging, sometimes screaming. I didn't argue with her. I just calmly gathered all the threats and verbal abuse, then filed a lawsuit. Now mother and son could be reunited in prison. By the time everything was settled, I had already been officially accepted into my dream grad school, scoring first place in both the written and interview portions. On the new campus, I found myself surrounded by brilliant mentors and peers. We shared the same passion for science, working toward our research goals together. One breakthrough led to another. The life I had lost in my past was finally back on track in this one. Just as I'd once dreamed, I became a researcher who could truly contribute to society. 6 months later, Jason's poisoning case went to trial. He was convicted on multiple counts and sentenced to 10 years in prison. He appealed the decision, but the original ruling was upheld. He had gained weight, grown ugly, and completely lost the confidence and swagger he once had. His back hunched, his presence empty. He looked like a useless, broken man. See, a stolen life always comes back to bite you. From afar, Jason looked at me. His mouth moved slightly as if trying to say something. Judging by the shape of his lips, it seemed like he remembered our past life. He realized he was wrong. He regretted it. But what past life? The people in the courtroom would only think he'd lost it from too much time in holding. The police quickly stepped in and dragged him away. I didn't look at Jason Chun again. I turned and walked out without a single glance back. People have to look forward in life. Jason had paid the price for his malicious actions. There was no need for me to carry around hatred for him anymore. Whatever we had in this life, it was over permanently. Outside the courthouse, the sun was shining. My beautiful new life was just